right, well, I'll open this public hearing from the Gasset Committee on the 10-year highway plan. And if we could have our senator lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, our veteran senator, we would appreciate that. Senator Daniels.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Senator Daniels. So my name is Executive Councilor Dave Wheeler. I represent the 5th Council District, which goes from Hudson almost to the Vermont border. And we have almost all the towns in Hillsborough County as well. Just as a briefing, the Gasset Committee consists of 5 executive councilors. We are all holding public hearings across the state in our district. In fact, there'll be 21 total hearings altogether. Also, there'll be one hearing, all virtual hearing for statewide near the end of October. This meeting as well has a virtual component, and people can raise their hands when they have comments when we get to that part of the evening. The DOT staff will be presenting a brief update on the current and projected revenue information, performance and conditions, and then information on how to review pertinent information. This will be with Pete Stamos. The National National Regional Planning staff will present a brief overview of their role in prioritizing transportation projects as well. And then we'll move into the public comment portion of this meeting. So with that, I'll turn it over to Pete and let him do his presentation and introduce National Regional Planning as well when the time is right.
All right, thank you, Counselor. Good evening, everyone. My name is Peter Stamnis, and I'm the Director of Project Development for New Hampshire DOT, and I oversee the development of the 10-year plan. Also with me tonight is Commissioner Victoria Sheehan, and Glenn Davison here is the project manager for the 10-year plan. We also have Lucy St. John and Sharon Allaire from the Bureau of Planning. The presentation tonight will be about a half an hour, including both presentations, and then we'll open it up for comments following the presentation. It is very high level, and I would encourage you to, if you need additional information or are interested in additional information, that you visit our DOT website. The full path is there, but if you Google NHDOT, you'll get there probably much quicker than typing anything in. So I would encourage you to go there and seek additional information. Everything will be posted. All our presentations are posted. Previous presentations are posted, and supplemental information is there also. As the Counselor mentioned, we do have a virtual component to this meeting. Bill Watson is facilitating that portion of the meeting. And Bill, how many participants do we have virtually?
Right now we have 8.
All right, thank you. A little bit about the process. We are currently in the current 10-year plan. It covers the years of 2021 through 2030, and it was approved and signed into law last July. Soon thereafter, we began the update of this plan, which covers the years of 23 through 2032. And it began with a Regional Planning Commission portion. Soon after, in the fall or so, reaching out to the communities, identifying priority projects, ranking, prioritizing. This spring, they were submitted to the DOT for consideration and inclusion into this draft. Now we're currently in the gasset stage. It's about 5 or 6 months long, and we're going out. This is our 8th public hearing out of 21, and we're gathering input on the draft that we've put forth. From there, the plan will go to the governor for review and update, and then on to the legislature for additional hearings and debate and modifications. Following that and votes, it'll be passed on to the governor to sign into law again, and that completes the 2-year process. So this happens every 2 years, and when it ends, it begins again. The outline, we'll start with a high-level funding summary, look at general funding synopsis for the plan. We'll review some of the strategies that were used in order to build this draft, outline some of the program funding adjustments that were made as part of this draft, take a quick look at the state of the infrastructure and look at projected outcomes based on this draft. We'll then turn it over to National Regional Planning Commission for discussion on priority projects, and we'll review some book information, and then we'll open it up for comments. And again, within a half an hour, you'll have the ability to make comments. High-level funding summary. Overall, state funding is reduced. COVID has impacted driving patterns. People are driving less, they're buying less gas, and paying fewer tolls. This impacts funding for betterment, SB 367, and turnpike programs. The betterment funding comes from 3 cents on the state gas tax. Betterment program makes improvements to roads that are generally not eligible for federal funding. Reductions mainly impact the resurfacing program. SB 367 funding comes from 4 cents of the gas tax. The SB 367 program funds improvements on rural roads and bridges on the state system and municipal bridges through the state aid bridge program. Projections show that there'll be less funding available for those areas. Turnpike funding comes from toll receipts. Reductions in revenue will cause delays to turnpike capital projects, and there are 5 major turnpike capital projects, and the delays range from 2 to 4 years. On the federal side, we anticipate increased federal funding. Talks continue in Washington on reauthorization. The FAST Act ended, was extended for a year, and today is the last day of the FAST Act. So for this draft of the plan for federal constraint, we utilized the plan that came out of the Senate Environment and Public Works, which is very similar to a portion of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act that's in the House. For New Hampshire, apportionment be approximately $1.14 billion over the years of 22 through 2026. It averages around $228 million per year, which is about a 24% increase on the current 10-year plan. There's also provisions in the IIJA for advanced general fund appropriations for New Hampshire of $242 million, which includes $45 million per year in additional funding for bridges and $3.4 million per year for the electric vehicle infrastructure program. That second piece is not included in this current draft. Only the apportionment, the $1.14 billion, is from a constraint standpoint, and this was a conservative assumption that we had recommended to Gasset, and they concurred that that would be a good way to approach this, building this draft. And we'll learn more in the coming, hopefully, weeks and not months about the Infrastructure Act coming out of the House. Other federal aid plans that you've heard about: CARES, CRISA, ARP. It's $133 million in COVID relief funds across all modes of transportation. Some of the strategies that we use to build this draft. Focus on maintenance and preservation of the existing network of roads and bridges. We continue to invest in core system programs and build on our successes in road and bridge conditions statewide. So we're making incremental improvements to the network to improve the level of service overall. Dedicating $50 million to Regional Planning Commission priority projects. These three areas are very similar to what we've done in the previous two updates of the plan. So as we're assuming additional funds coming from the federal government, these are the areas that in the prioritization that we put together to utilize those additional funds. We want to accelerate existing 10-year plan projects where possible. We want to fully fund existing 10-year plan projects. Convert Garvey bonded projects to federal aid funds. Modify existing programs to improve projected conditions in outer years by including inflationary adjustments, and consider new projects in outer years to improve safety and capacity. We continue to invest in other essential modes of transportation, including transit, rail, airports, and active transportation. Funding synopsis. This table, we call this the rainbow chart. This is in the 10-year plan project listing book, and identifies the investments included in the plan by funding category. Each one of the colors and columns at the top represents a different funding category, and each of the cells within this table identify the investments for that funding category by fiscal year. Overall, $4.4 billion transportation plan. That's a $248 million increase over the current 10-year plan. The road and bridge mode, 83% of the plan at $3.7 billion. Other modes, $739 million, 17% of the total plan. Federal highway category is a large funding source in the 10-year plan. This draft includes 81% of the highway funded category and 56% of the total 10-year plan funding. The use is prohibited for operations and maintenance, and each one of these categories, funding categories, comes with its own set of rules of where we can use the money and how we can use the money, and it's really important to keep in mind. We can't move money from category to category, with very few exceptions. We can't do that. Some of the major funding adjustments when compared to the current 10-year plan. And again, this is on the federal side, assuming the constraint level and the funding included in the Senate Environment and Public Works plan. Paving investment is increased by $164 million. So we've included inflation in our paving programs, and we've added some funds to the resurfacing programs to improve our miles paved to better meet the targets that we have set. We're increasing state bridge investment by $169 million. We're inflating the bridge programs again, and added funds on the maintenance and preservation side. And we've also included additional funding in the outer years that is not allocated to any bridge in particular, but it'll be utilized to accelerate the removal of new red list bridges as they come on the red list. Converting Garvey bonding to federal aid. So there's a net increase of $58 million. So we had a number of projects totaling $163 million that we were going to issue bonds in order to construct. Minus the debt service for those projects, we increased the overall allotment of federal funds going to these projects by $58 million over the current 10-year plan. And Garvey bonds are just a bond that's paid back with our federal apportionment. Future federal apportionment. We are fully funding scope-constrained projects. So we identified a number of projects that we had controlled the scope on in order to maintain fiscal constraint. And these projects, we've added $54 million overall to them in order to complete it in a fashion that was originally envisioned. So the non-highway sources of federal funding adjustments is still pending. So federal railroad, federal transit, and federal aviation funding, the new funding, is not included in this plan at this point. State of the infrastructure, road and bridge condition projections. So these are our outcome slides. The graph at the top left identifies miles of road resurfaced on the statewide network. The darker line from the middle part of the graph to the left is actual miles paved for a particular calendar year. And it starts at 2013 and runs to 2032 at the end of the 10-year plan overall. As the line switches to a lighter blue color, those are projected miles paved on the statewide network. And the green line is what we target overall from where we would like to be in order to maintain the conditions on our roads, which is 500 miles. So there's approximately 5,000 miles on the statewide network, and we like to be on a 10-year cycle for resurfacing, and so that equates to 500 miles per year. So overall paving miles decrease through the draft 10-year plans based on the current level of investment. And they decrease from where we are now, around 500 miles, to 288 by the end of the draft 10-year plan. However, conditions over the next 4 years are expected to be above average. 80% go to fair. So we're doing pretty good, and we'd like to keep it that way. Overall conditions in later years are expected to decline by around 30% to 50% go to fair on the statewide network. And Tier 3 and 4 roads, or the lower volume rural roads, are expected to decline the most, with anticipated decreases in state funds. So the major decrease here comes in 2026, when our TIFIA pledge goes away. Basically, there's around $12 million per year that's used on rural roads and bridges from the SB 367 account. That'll basically stop and will go to pay debt service, complete debt service on a $200 million TIFIA note that was taken out to complete I-93 Salem to Manchester. The graphic on the bottom left identifies the number of state red list bridges. Similarly, the line to the left shows actual red list bridges numbers from 2013 through currently. We have 118. The numbers to the right in the blue project the numbers that we expect to see based on the investment level that we have in the current 10-year plan. So there's an additional $169 million in state bridge investment, and we expect the number of red list bridges to drop from 118 to 91 by the end of the 10-year plan. For active transportation, we continue to enhance active transportation opportunities, investment in active transportation components through construction projects. We estimate that there's approximately $17 million per year investments in active transportation projects included in this draft. Investments are also made through mandated federal programs, including transportation alternatives, recreation trails, and congestion mitigation and air quality program. The current 2021 grant round is closed. We've identified 13 projects that are all included in this draft 10-year plan. On the transit side, we continue to address transit challenges. Demand response, there's limited services for seniors and the disabled. Service frequency is limited in urban areas, and route coverage, really there isn't enough coverage in the rural areas. And with that, I will turn it over to Jay Minkara from National Regional Planning Commission. Nashua Regional Planning Commission. Let's say that twice.
Not national yet. I'm not sure who's going to be advancing the slides or who I should be looking
I
at.
can do that for you if you
I
want.
would appreciate that. So thank you, Executive Councilor Wheeler, and thank you, Commissioner, for providing the opportunity to speak this evening. Just going to give a brief presentation overall on our process and our priorities. So moving to the next slide. Hopefully, we started our outreach process really fairly early, as early as May, towards the end of May of 20. And that really continued all through the summer into the fall. We conducted pretty extensive outreach to, by letter, email, reaching out to all of our select boards, planning board chairs, town administrators, town planners, other key staff. We, of course, were following up with one-on-one conversations, really throughout that period to develop a good list of projects. And of new projects, we were also asking all of our partners to look at the existing 10-year plan and confirm that their priority projects, in fact, remain priorities, and also to look at projects that are in our Metropolitan Transportation Plan that weren't programmed. So overall, projects that we received, we really had a decent batch of projects, we think, this year from the town of Brookline. This is a critical intersection improvement along Route 13, taking a problematic intersection and making it essentially a much safer, more functional T intersection. In Merrimack, this is replacement of a pedestrian bridge over the Sahegan River. This is directly east of the Turnpike, and it forms a really critical part of the trail system in Merrimack, a very important and heavily used area. So a key project for the town. In Nashua, significant improvements to the Canal Street and Bridge Street area. That's right near the Merrimack River. Heading towards Hudson. This is really I would call it a complete streets project. There are a significant improvement to sidewalks in this area, making them more handicapped accessible. And really there's some significant condition challenges in that area and making it safer for all users. Next slide. We also have another Nashua project. This is significant improvements to several bus stop locations throughout Nashua, including replacing some existing bus shelters, building some new ones, additional seating and lighting. And this is really focused on improving the experience for transit users throughout the city, safer, more comfortable. Amenities for passengers. In Wilton, this is a new project. This is really part of a long-term Riverwalk improvement plan in downtown Wilton. It's certainly aimed as a transportation project, enhancing bicycle, I shouldn't say bicycle so much, but pedestrian connections within the downtown area, improving safe routes to schools. But it's also a critical component of downtown revitalization efforts in Wilton. So it's an economic development initiative as well. And then regionally, the optimization of signals on several state highways, including on 101, 101A, 111, 102, 3A, and 38. So like all of the regional planning commissions, we did go through an evaluation process, a scoring process for all the projects. These were really consistent. All the RPCs used the same or similar criteria, and this is also consistent with state priorities. So you can see these here, and I think we don't need to go through them in detail. So overall, you can see all of the projects that we had listed with their score. And the total dollar amounts. The total allocation for our region was $6,175,000. We also do, you'll notice on the bottom, we had a project in the last round, sidewalk improvements on Kinley Street, that weren't fully funded. So we carried over the balance of that funding into this round. So there were some other changes to projects in the 10-year plan. Actually, one of them is not on the slide, which is worth noting, is this version of the 10-year plan does reflect a 3-year delay in the widening of the Turnpike through Merrimack. That is a high priority project, and of course that's due to funding challenges. 2 projects with other significant changes. There's a high priority project for safety improvements along 101 going all the way from Wilton to Bedford. that so far has not been programmed with sufficient funds to make all the improvements necessary. But this draft adds $1.2 million in addition to what was funded in the previous round. So that certainly helps us get to our goal of completing all of those safety improvements. And the Hudson Boulevard project, this is, for those who remember, this was originally part of the circumferential highway. So this would be the southern portion of the circumferential highway that was added back into the 10-year plan in the last round as Hudson Boulevard. There was no funding associated with it for construction or for engineering, but that has been removed from the current draft in this round. And then moving on to TAP projects that were added. There were 2 projects that were added. So first of all, in Merrimack, construction of 3,600 linear feet of sidewalk along DW Highway. This is really an important addition to the sidewalk network in the center of Merrimack that really builds on the work that they've been doing for several years through their sidewalk improvement plan. That's coming in at $1.6 million. And then in Nashua, construction of a 10-foot multi-use path. This would connect the existing downtown Riverwalk, but the Riverwalk is also planned to undergo some significant improvements, and it would connect it to an extension of the Nashua Heritage Rail Trail project, which is, Julie can probably correct me if I'm wrong, but just about doubling in size. And that's a CMAQ project that's currently funded. So it's providing a really critical connection between 2 really significant bicycle and pedestrian projects. So happy to answer any questions, and I just have to say quickly, I was negligent in not introducing the rest of our team. We do have our principal transportation planner, Greg Lantos, in the audience, and we have Matt Wakins, who is a senior transportation planner. So if there are questions for the projects, both of them are probably far better equipped to answer them than I am. Thank you.
Moving on to provide a little bit of information to help you navigate the information in the 10-year plan project listings book. There's a couple of tables and graphics that will be in the front of the book. The top table is the all funding chart, and it identifies investments in the plan by type of work. And so the various types of work included here are pavement, active transportation, individual projects, airports, transit, and the graphic, the pie chart to the left, really just identifies the percentages of those investments overall for the plan. And this is all funds included and just broken out by the type of work. The bottom graph is the rainbow chart. Just to build on that, the pie chart really shows you the overall percentage of each one of the various funding groups, and that big piece of blue there is the federal highway category. All of the individual projects are alphabetically listed in the book, as well as the programs are also in there, but in this case, this is an individual project in Albany. It's on Route New Hampshire 16. Number 2 will always have the route number. Number 3 will always give you a basic scope of work. 4 and 5 are some of the categories that are used to capture the work. 6 and 7 are important, obviously, because this includes the funding, the years of funding, and the program that it's identified in. Number 8 gives you the total funding included in this draft 10-year plan from a 23 through 32 standpoint. And the number 10, bottom right-hand corner, provides the total funding in the project. In this case, there was a little over $2 million that lies outside of the 23 through 32 plan time frame. Wanted to identify, in this case, one project of interest. I think Jay covered quite a few of the other projects, but statewide 40915, it's an exit sign renumbering project, and currently our exit signs are sequentially numbered, And this project is required for us to include in the plan for commentary. And this will renumber the exit signs to mile marker based reference. And it's about $1 million for this project. Jay already mentioned the Hudson 42108, which is not included in this draft at this time. Last year, we created an online survey. We've created another one this update. You can get to this through the DOT website. Take 6 or 7 minutes to fill it out. We would appreciate everyone out there to take advantage of this. We learn a lot from it. With that, we can turn it over to back to the Councilor Wheeler for comments from those in the room first, and then we'll move to virtual after.
Thank you, Peter. As part of this plan, could you make some comments about the all-electronic tolling items that, were on the last council agenda, and whether we're moving forward with that, and how much public input we've had to eliminate all the cash lanes at, I think it's Dover, Rochester? What have we done for public comment and public input on that, whether the public wants cash lanes eliminated?
So I believe it was during the last 10-year plan update that the title of the projects associated with the replacement of the Dover and Rochester toll plaza was adjusted to reflect all electronic tolling as the preferred solution. So since that time, we've advanced the design. We've actually advertised for construction, the replacement of both the Dover and Rochester plaza. And those contracts will be coming to GNC shortly. So those two plazas, the intention is to convert them to AET. And this was vetted through the 10-year plan process, and we also had public hearings in both communities as we advanced those two projects. The other project where AET has been entertained is the upgrades to the Bedford Toll Plaza, but that's something that's still being advanced, and we would anticipate more opportunity for feedback on that location.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, so with that, we'll start the public input portion of this meeting, and we'll call on Julie from the city of Nashua. Give us your thoughts on the 10-year plan.
Awesome. Good evening, Councilor Wheeler and Commissioner Sheehan. Thank you to the staff of DOT and the NRPC for a very informative presentation. My name is Julie Chismus, and I'm a resident of Merrimack. I'm a transportation analyst and long-range planner for the City of Nashua's Community Development Division. I'm also on the board of the Bike Walk Alliance of New Hampshire, whose mission it is to get more people out biking and walking for both transportation and recreation. And I'm on the board of the Friends of the Sahegan Valley Rail Trail, which is actively exploring the feasibility of a rail with trail along the Hillsborough line between Nashua and Wilton. I want to thank DOT for the many positive steps that it's taken to improve safety and accessibility for pedestrians and bicyclists in New Hampshire over the last decade, including the funding of several sidewalk, bike lane, and other complete streets improvements here in Nashua that Jay mentioned. And in Nashua, we have a lot of residents who don't drive or own a motor vehicle, so these are really important projects. The city's been awarded several TAP and CMAQ grants that have really helped us expand our non-motorized network. So I thank you for that. However, as you plan and implement transportation improvements over the next 10 years, I ask you to please consider the following. Public input summarized in local, regional, and state pedestrian and bicycle plans show overwhelming support for projects that protect vulnerable roadway users and provide low-stress access to key destinations, including schools, employment centers, and parks and recreational areas. Additional funding for infrastructure improvements that increase safety and accessibility for bicyclists, walkers, and mobility device users of all ages, abilities, and socioeconomic backgrounds is critical to achieving the visions and goals of these plans. When planning, designing, and maintaining roadways, please adopt and promote a culture that prioritizes the needs of all users, those who travel by bike, foot, personal assistive mobility device, micromobility, public transit, or private vehicle. Incorporate complete street principles into your everyday practices and encourage your municipal partners to do the same. Please explore alternative funding mechanisms, leverage existing resources, and work with the legislature to increase the amount of funding for active transportation projects. Research and invest in new technologies and data collection tools that provide bicyclist and pedestrian data so meaningful metrics can be developed and progress measured. In addition to usage data, bicycle and pedestrian crash data should be closely tracked and used to prioritize investments. Finally, please build out the active transportation network as detailed in the NHDOT's 2021 statewide pedestrian and bicycle transportation plan. Recognize the crucial role of rail trails within the network and fund projects that will close the significant gaps in the statewide and interstate rail trail network. Maintain an interactive map of the plan's envisioned bicycle and pedestrian network that identifies planned projects and completed segments so we can see progress and plan for future projects. Thank you for the opportunity to provide input. I appreciate your time and your consideration of these comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julie. And we'll call on John, representing Meals for on Wheels.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Wheeler, for holding this forum. Thank you, Commissioner Sheehan and representatives from the DOT and such. So I'm John Araquezo. I'm the president of Meals on Wheels of Hillsborough County. And what I hope to do today is just talk a little bit about how transportation affects access to food, especially in our rural communities, and also can have an effect on social isolation. So just quickly, Meals on Wheels is not just about delivering meals, it's also about doing wellness checks. We typically keep hundreds of people out of nursing homes by doing this, and we help them stay at home and stay independent. We also provide some limited transportation services. Mainly in Manchester, we're running door-to-door, bus door-to-door service for transportation. We do some of it on a limited basis, on an individual basis at some of our other sites around Hillsborough County. We'd like to do more. We're working with the Bureau of Elderly and Adult Services to change the rate structure to make it more attractive for us to do more transportation. I'll get into that in just a minute. What I want to talk about is social isolation first. We typically do a survey for all of our clients every year, and year after year the survey results on one specific item always remains about the same, and that is we ask the question, how many other visitors do you get besides the person for Meals on Wheels every week? 20% of our clients say no one. They don't see anybody. Since the peak of the pandemic, we did another survey, and that 20% rose up to 60%, which is alarming, the amount of people that are isolated right now. We know that many of these people that are isolated are in rural communities, so we've been focusing on western Hillsborough County. There is a study that was done done by the Southwest Region Planning Commission, and the study's called the Monadnock Region Food Access Analysis, and I'll give you a copy before I leave. That was interesting because in that analysis they looked at access to food, especially in rural communities. They looked at what are the components that make people food insecure. And there were two major components, and that one was poverty, and the other one was that they don't own a car. And when you look at rural communities where they don't have public transportation, that goes up quite a bit. Interestingly enough, in western Hillsborough County, one of the highest rates of this equation happened in Peterborough, which is interesting. High rates of people not owning cars and correlation with poverty. As a result, we've decided to move two of our nutrition distribution sites, one from Hillsborough County and one from Greenville, and combine them in Peterborough, make that a central hub for food distribution, and also set up dining centers. However, we'd like to do more. We'd like to use ARP monies. We now have an opportunity to use ARP monies for Title III-B services, which includes transportation. We like to buy some vehicles. We feel that we can run door-to-door services throughout Hillsborough, western Hillsborough County. We can help people get to activities, get to doctor's appointments, get to stores. It's another aspect of this study. They looked at food deserts, and if you don't know what a food desert is, that is when you don't have access to a grocery store with fresh vegetables. So you might have a little convenience store, a gas station that sells canned goods, but food deserts have effect on nutrition, and nutrition has effect on how healthy people are. And so getting people to grocery stores is really, really important. So let me just close by saying we are looking for feedback at Meals on Wheels to see how encouraging it would be for us, and maybe look for some partners to help get this new rate structure put into place. The current rate structure is you get one rate, you can ride all day to as many locations as you want. We'd like to be a rate, you get on the bus and we get paid, and next time you get on the bus you get paid again. It just seems to make sense. So anyway, thank you again for listening to me. I really appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you very much, John. And Phyllis Elkins.
Yes, I am Phyllis Eakins. I'm the corresponding secretary of the Merrimack Senior Club, and I presented myself here tonight to answer questions that the seniors are going to have when they heard about this transportation thing. Their concern is, as was mentioned, public transportation in Merrimack is very limited, and consequently the seniors don't have the opportunity to be able to do the things they would like to, because there's some difficulty with the Nashua transit system. We've had meetings with the Nashua transit system, and they're trying to work things out. My report back to the club will be that this presentation was primarily directed to the bridges and the pedestrian routes, which is, in my opinion, important because I walk a lot, as much as I can, so I certainly support that. And I thank you for the opportunity. And because I'm new, I don't know the names of all the people, and my other suggestion would be, on a program like this, that there be a list of who the people are rather than just in front of you, because it's probably better for people like me to be able to understand who you are. I'm a transplant from Pennsylvania, so that makes the difference. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Phyllis. And that makes a good segue into Camille from Nashua Transit.
Good evening, Commissioner Sheehan and Executive Counselor Wheeler, DOT staff, and NRPC staff. Thank you for the opportunity to provide this venue and the time to be able to present to you this evening. A little history about why I'm here this evening is just because back in 2012, Nashua Transit System changed from a large urban system to a small urban system, and with that it changed our funding structure, and that is the reason for mainly the ask this evening. There's a few points that I'd like to address along the way, and then I'll summarize right at the end. I'm a resident of Nashua and also the transit administrator for Nashua Transit System. I moved here from out of state, took the bus as a young person all the way through high school, and that's how I got to where I needed to go. Nashua Transit System has a great coverage in the area, and the funding for it comes from federal funds and also from state assistance for the capital portion of what we do. Now, New Hampshire does not currently provide transit operating funds to small and large urban systems. Just a little history there is the allocation of CARES Act funding assisted public transit systems with the financial impact of COVID. It'll take about 3 to 5 years for public transit to come back from the effects of COVID. The state had annually appropriated $200,000 in operating assistance to assist the transit systems in New Hampshire. Consider appropriating the $200,000 that was reallocated during COVID back into the state budget for transit operating. Also, NTS applied for discretionary funding in the amount of approximately $3 million over the last 3 years. And that funding was used to assist with renovating a transit facility and also replacing vehicles and equipment. Thank you to New Hampshire DOT to help to fund 10% of the match that was used to secure the funding for the discretionary funding. We did not utilize the 5307 funds that we received from the federal government, but instead we applied for competitive grants to bring more federal dollars to the area, and that goes back to what I initially stated, was that in 2012, NTS did change from a small urban system to a large urban system, which means that we have less federal dollars coming into the area to provide transportation. So an increase in state dollars and also discretionary funding has helped with that. In order to maintain our fleet in the state of good repair, we did apply for the funds, and also we have reached out for the state funds, and that has been very successful. The state DOT representatives that work with us have been very helpful in the past and also in the future. Just a few facts. The public transit funds that are allocated by New Hampshire amount to 61% per capita. It's one of the lowest of the 6 New England states. The next closest per capita is Maine at $11.55 per capita, and is one of the lowest nationally across the states, including federal and state allocations. The New Hampshire also, when planning for the future, as stated by the person who spoke right in front of me, the plan now is to plan for the future to assist people to be able to age in place. Current data shows that the annual transit trips in 2020 were 1.9 million, and that they're going to grow between 2015 and 2040, rising to 2.8 million trips by 2030 and 305 million trips by 2040. Currently, only 34 out of 244 communities in New Hampshire have a regular public transit system. Other than that, we provide door-to-door or curb-to-curb transportation service utilizing van service in a more rural area. So more funding for public transit would allow for more fixed route and more accessibility for seniors to be able to age in place. Moving forward, it is imperative that Nashua Transit System secures sustainable stream of operating funds from the state of New Hampshire, also from the federal level, to remain having a high level of service that provides quite a bit of coverage in New Hampshire and also allows for us to go out to the outlying areas and provide an affordable rate for our near neighbors of Merrimack and Hudson and other neighbors as well. For our facilities, and also the impetus for this lies in the concluding statements in the 2020 NHDOT Strategic Statewide Transit Assessment. And what was found after the transit assessment is that there was a need to do a transit assessment needs study. And what that study would allow for is to do a more deep dive into transit funding and what the options are, also policy making and many other transit related types of needs. With that being said, the data in the transit needs assessment may also be used to assess the funding needs for future NHDOT 10-year plans. So you would have that document in place to be able to see what the needs of the state are now and in the future. Thank you to the Gasset Commission and NHDOT for your support of public transit. After the last Gasset hearings in 2020, FHWA funding was flexed to better support the demands for additional public transit and community transportation services. And this evening, I'll leave you with kind of an off phrase from a movie. If you build it, they will come. It's a movie we saw a long time ago, and I'll leave you with, if you fund it, they will ride. So thank you very much for your consideration and the opportunity to speak with you this evening.
Thank you for your testimony. And then Chris from the Amherst Fire Rescue, Amherst Bike and Pedestrian Committee.
It's an unusual combination, I'm certain. So thanks for having this public hearing this evening. I definitely appreciate the opportunity to speak. I have a couple of things just to mention, and a little bit less eloquent than some of my predecessors. So the first thing that I wanted to mention is that in the current plan is project 42593. And this is a project that was there since the last go-around. And in the town of Amherst, this is a bike ped project for a rail trail. And the town of Amherst has created and started funding a capital reserve fund for our municipal responsibility for this project. So I hope that it is kept in the 10-year plan and can happen on schedule or earlier, who knows. But please don't make it go away, because we're already funding it. And then the second thing is I've been coming to these every other year when they occur. And the other one that I want to speak about is Project 13692D, the New Hampshire 101 Safety Improvements. I've read the 2002 corridor study several times, and when it came out, it indicated that New Hampshire 101 between Wilton and Bedford had a 250% higher mortality rate than comparable roads in the area. A few years went by, and then I joined the fire department in Amherst, and my very first car accident on the department was on New Hampshire 101, where it was a six-car crash, multi-fatality incident, and it was an interesting way to get into the fire service. Some of my peers quit on that day, or in subsequent days, I should say, but I remember as the sun came up that evening and we were picking up body parts from the road, that the people who had been on the department for a very long time had an attitude of, this is just how it is on New Hampshire 101. And I was new, I didn't know any better, and that continues to actually be the case. And it has not changed in any regard since I joined in 2007, nor had it since 2002 when the corridor study was written. So I would implore that the safety improvements incorporate the two design characteristics which are mentioned in the 2002 corridor study, which regrettably are not a portion of the scheduled safety improvements currently in the 10-year plan as it is currently established. The two safety improvements that are very much necessary are the separation of direction so that head-on collisions cannot occur. That is how everyone keeps dying there. And then the second way that everyone keeps dying or having very serious crashes is the lack of functional use here. It should be a limited use highway, and we continue to double down on having local access use on a road that is effectively a highway. And just like if we were to put a drive-through on Interstate 93, it would have bizarre results. This portion of New Hampshire 101 is exactly the same way. So please do as the 2002 corridor study asks, and I recognize that certain portions of that corridor study may not be necessary, such as the increase of lanes in each direction. I don't see the vehicular volume meriting a substantial increase in lanes or anything like that. But what needs to happen is there must be a physical barrier or some other separation of lanes by direction. Since I said this in 2019, then we've still had more fatalities that I've responded to in Amherst and Milford. The last one I was personally there for was a 19-year-old girl coming home from work. And this is just going to keep happening until there's a physical barrier. There's nothing preventing people from having fatal collisions that are head-on. So the improvements that are there right now are things like adding traffic lights, which will not solve this problem, adding passing lanes, which will not solve this problem, on-ramp, off-ramp improvements will not solve this problem. None of them will, only the two things that I mentioned. Thank you.
Chris, I have a question for you, if you would. Is there any particular portion of that stretch, it sounds like you're talking Amherst and Milford, that seems to be most problematic?
Yeah, it's Amherst at the Bedford town line all the way to the 101A intersection in Milford. It's commonly referred to as the bypass. That entire area, when it was built as a bypass, it was constructed as a limited access highway arrangement, and people behave in that way as they would. However, unlike limited access highways, there is no physical barrier to prevent head-on collisions.
Thank you, Chris. That concludes my list of people who have signed a card that want to speak. Is there anybody else in the room that wants to speak before we ask if there's anybody in Cyberland that wants to speak? No? Okay, we can ask Mr. Watson if there's anybody with their hands raised.
Good evening, Counselor. We have 2 people with their hands raised so far. The first gentleman's name is Tom Christensen.
Hello,
Go ahead.
I'm Tom Christensen, and I'm from Amherst. And I sit on the board of the directors of the Friends of the Sahegan Valley Rail Trail. We're a nonprofit organization who's advocating for a rail with trail along the Hillsborough branch rail line spanning 16 miles from East Nashua to Wilton Center. The Hillsborough branch rail line is currently for sale along with all of the Pan Am Railways real estate. The current rail line is in general disrepair. It is currently listed as FRA exempt and thus has a speed limit of only 10 miles per hour. Even with this, derailments occur regularly in the rail line as it is in obvious need of improvement. I'm here today to request that the New Hampshire Department of Transportation consider acquiring the Hillsborough branch rail line in the 10-year plan so that it might be both repaired to a most useful condition, but crucially to include a rail with trail within the corridor. If this is not feasible, I would issue a secondary request that the New Hampshire Department of Transportation include design engineering for the rehabilitation of this rail line, plus the incorporation of a rail with trail within the corridor into the 10-year plan. Advancing a rail with trail along this corridor would offer an incredible benefit for our region, providing safe alternative transportation options for 150,000 people who live within 2 miles of the route, as well as profound economic opportunities, as 68,400 jobs are also situated along the 2-mile route, or within the 2 miles of this route. Thank you very much for hosting this event and recording my input. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Who's next online, Bill?
The next person, his name is Alex Vogt.
Good evening. My name is Alex Vogt. I'm from Bedford, New Hampshire. I'm a retired civil engineer from the Department of Transportation. My first comment I'd like to make is concerning the TAP funding. Currently in the 10-year plan, as mentioned, there was $10.5 million of federal money allocated for TAP projects, 13 projects out of a total of 34 applicants. All those applications were excellent projects for quality of life, improvements of safety for pedestrians and bicycles, and really important to the communities. I would request that the DOT not just fund the minimum to the TAP program, but increase it so that all these projects can be funded. Look at our neighbors, Vermont, Massachusetts, and Maine. They do a much better job on funding rail trails and these type of projects. They're way ahead of us. We need a plan, a 10-year plan, to finish the Granite State Rail Trail. Someone at the DOT needs to keep track of that and monitor the progress and make sure that we're going forward towards that. This is a big economic boost to the state for tourism and safety and quality of life for all the communities along the way. In addition to the Granite State Rail Trail, all the other connecting rail trails are important too. The Heritage Trail and also the East Coast Greenway. All these need to be monitored and advanced more with DOT support. It was mentioned that there is 17 million in active transportation. And if you go to the department's website, it talks about making all transportation facilities, pedestrian and bicycle, considered. We need to do a much better job on that. Currently, the department is doing a very poor job on making all their projects accessible to bikes and pedestrians. Recently on 101 Bedford project, that the town of Amherst and town of Bedford wanted to have pedestrian and bicycle facilities, was totally rejected by the DOT. Just recently, I was up on Manchester and Hooksett on Route 3. The repaving job along that project did not include any improvements to the sidewalk where there's needed ADA improvements required. In addition, the white line was painted right back where it was, 1 foot from the curb, which does not accommodate bikes at all. The new exit 4A on 93, $90 million project, is eliminating sidewalks that was shown on the public hearing plan. These are not cost-saving issues that should be done. You shouldn't cut the pedestrian and bike infrastructure. You should try to expand it and work with the communities more. Finally, I'd like to comment on one project that didn't make the 10-year plan. There is a Bedford Route 3 project that would connect and widen the highway between the Manchester Airport Access Road up through the Target intersection. This project is needed as this part of Bedford is growing quickly. There's a lot of development, and the pedestrian and bike facilities along this area need to be improved. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you for your testimony. Bill, is there anyone else with their hand raised?
No, there's not. That's it.
Okay. That kind of makes me want to ask a question of the department. So on the Merrimack 3,600 feet of sidewalk, who will be responsible for the maintenance of that? Will that be maintained by Merrimack and have to be plowed if the state pays for it? Or what are the rules on this particular sidewalk?
That would be required to be maintained by the municipality.
Okay, thank you. No other comments from people in the room? Going once, going twice. Sold. No. So I think that concludes our program, except for I think probably Commissioner would like to say some final words and talk about where you can send written comments, for the people in the audience or online who want to send something in or add to what you've said here tonight.
So on the agendas that were provided this evening, as well as on the screen, you'll see the contact information for Bill Watson, who is our administrator for the Bureau of Planning Community Assistance. So written comments can be sent to Bill's attention between now and November 8th. And there will be future opportunities to testify. If there's others that you know who weren't able to be here this evening, please encourage them to look at the agenda. And then lastly, we will have that entirely virtual meeting at the end of the process to hopefully allow any of those who weren't able to get out to evening meetings to participate in that forum as well. So lots of opportunities to be part of the process. And please take the survey. There's some very important questions in the survey that don't pertain to projects, but help us understand what the thoughts are when it comes to how we should be strategizing and investing money in the broader, more programmatic sense.
Thank you, Commissioner. So the GASSET committee will, after we've had all the hearings throughout the state, will gather as a whole, read all the comments that have been written down, and make our decisions and prioritize the 10-year plan, and then send that on to the governor. We'll send it on to the legislature, who first the House, and then they'll send it over to Senator Daniels, and it'll be all up to him. So, so is there any other comments or information from the department? All right. Seeing none, we'll close this meeting. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.